Welcome to New Game Plus, a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name is Kenny again.
Nolan.
And welcome back, Kenny. You were missed last week.
Thanks.
That was last week.
Yeah.
Does it feel
That
like
seems like forever ago.
longer?
We might be okay
shorter?
without you.
No comment? Do you agree?
I mean, I bring all the
He's
flavor.
considering quitting.
I bring all the flavor, but some people might want to be on like a diet version of their podcasting. And so, I don't know, it might be better for some folks.
So maybe each and every week we should record with you and then without you. The same episode with and without, and see how that goes.
It's a great idea.
Well, you actually sent me this article this week that we'll actually talk about here at the top of the episode. A pair of Game Boy and Game Boy Advance emulators for the Switch were leaked on Monday. And that's nothing special outside of there are signs of it being official Nintendo products.
It's like trusted source, right? They were right about something else in the past that they leaked or something.
It's that, but then also like some of the metadata on this stuff and like some of that.
They
like
can figure that stuff
But
out.
also, there have been people before that have created these knockoff emulators that have put that stuff in so that their emulator gets press.
Yeah.
I'm not buying it.
Oh, you're not buying it?
Nah.
Wow. I kind of would buy that because that seems like the natural next move for their online.
Yeah, they're adding
offering.
so much there. I don't know why we wouldn't expect more. And you should be hyped if we get some Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, like, straight onto the Switch content. So
Yeah, it's on the
be
Go
an
console,
optimist.
so.
Assume it's a preview of things to come, and we'll just hope.
I'm not making that assumption. But don't get me wrong. I would love this. I think it's a great idea. And Nintendo might very well be working on it. I don't know if this is it. Nintendo stuff, does it actually get leaked?
Not often.
I mean, everything gets leaked to some degree. It doesn't matter who you are. You're going to have some leaks. But
Nintendo
you're right.
Keeps that stuff.
You've been burned by the internet before, and you have no trust left in your heart, and we all understand that.
This like virtual console stuff that Nintendo does, I love and hate because eventually it becomes depreciated and they remove the service, like the servers for it, like they did on the DS store, the Wii store. Like it's just them making money on the same games again, and I get it. It's nice to play on the Switch, but I don't know. I'm so sick of it.
And I understand that sentiment for sure, but I would rather that and they make money off of it all over again than it not be readily available to gamers today. Like the only way that people can play along with us on a lot of these games is emulation, and we obviously don't fault people for that because they just have not made it easy to play these games.
It's necessary.
Yeah, so having this kind of service to where people can play it. I mean, we've got gamers in our community that strictly will not do emulation.
I see what you're saying.
And so, like Brojim, for example, can't play the majority of games with us. Yeah. But when there's opportunities and options like this, it opens up more people to retro games.
I see what you're saying. It's an official capacity emulator that you're paying for still. Okay.
Yeah. Give the people what they want, and what they want is retro games, especially on the Game Boy Advance.
They're the only good games.
That's what
existence.
I want.
New games suck.
Yeah, Dustin is the people.
Yeah, so we'd be thrilled if Nintendo really were to allow us to play some of these Game Boy and GBA games on the Switch. I'm confident that we would love to sink our teeth into a few.
Try harder. Come on.
That's so bad. The sink our teeth was plenty sufficient. Why'd you have to throw the terrible one in there too?
I didn't even hear that part because I was stuck on the confin.
We'll sink our teeth into a few good classic games. A bloody right. Our retro game of the week. Welcome back, Kenny.
I missed this.
You should leave.
Castlevania. Period.
Overview.
Castlevania, as Dustin likes to call it, is a Nintendo 64 game. Not to be confused with Castlevania for the NES. Same title, well, same name. But This is for the N64. First 3D Castlevania game ever, which is big. Came out in 1999. It's developed, of course, by Konami. We know them. We love them. And 3D was scary for devs around this time, and I am sure that the team that worked on this one was terrified.
As well they should be.
That's not an easy thing to do. We have played.
Think about this.
We played many games. The cool thing is, in the era of the '90s, typically, in the mid to late '90s, is when a lot of games, to continue to survive, are trying to make the leap from 2D to 3D, and that is not easy to do. I would argue that some of the stronger contenders there are games like Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time with Zelda, the Grand Theft Auto series, even the.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, even like maybe to a lesser degree, the Metroid series, I feel like there was some complications and difficulties there, but it's not an easy task for any of these, I would say.
You say that like it's a given. They could have chosen not to. They did Symphony of the Night. That's the same era.
You can though, can you?
And I know in the moment it wasn't as popular, but it's a banger of a game. It's really, really good. And yes, it took a little while for people to realize 2D is still valid, but there's all sorts of games that live in just two-dimension land and are just fine.
It took a long time.
I don't know.
It took a long time for people to be like, okay, 2D was actually pretty solid.
I get that functionally it was required, but I just don't like that fact, and I don't know. I think I'm in some amount of denial about exactly how it went down.
You are. Because either way, they had to make that choice because you'd get left behind. But this series, think about it. You're up against Mario 64 and Zelda, who pulled it off great, like best, like to this day on the console. So that's intimidating. And to my understanding, this one is... Fans wish this one didn't exist. A large portion of Castlevania hardcore fans always meme on this game. That was my understanding going into the first play, and I kind of carried that in my mind as I sat down to play it. And I get it. It was, I would argue, a perfect series, and we'll get into it as 2D. And then when you're trying to carry that, anyways. Plot. In 1852, Dracula wakes up. And the two protagonists in this game, Carrie Fernandez and or Reinhard Schneider, who is heir to the Belmont clan, which is the protagonist from the previous games, some of the games, make their way to Dracula's castle to stop him. It's very like normal Castlevania fare. This time it's in Wallachia, Transylvania, and they go up there to stop him from killing everybody.
We played other Castlevania games on the podcast. Kenny, you just mentioned in passing Symphony of the Night. That was actually my first Castlevania experience.
I forget about that.
Yep.
And it blew me away. Absolutely fell in love with and whatever 209%ed it or whatever it was. I don't remember. We played Castlevania Circle of the Moon, which was
GBA?
Was that a GBA? Yeah, okay.
GBA. Yep.
And then we
that's
played
that's the card one, right? Circle of the Moon.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we played what is it called? Shrek Castle at the Castlevania.
Yeah, a lesser known but higher tier game ultimately.
Still a banger, yeah.
Did you know there's nearly 40 titles in this series?
I didn't know that it's a big one. I didn't know it was 40.
Yeah, I'd never have guessed
that's colossal.
Yeah. I would imagine they're including in that number, the any kind of remakes or even spin-off titles, but still 40, like that's a series.
Oh, that you could put that up against like Mega Man. Like that's a lot of titles.
When we played Symphony of the Night, I actually, stupid me, wanted to go and play all of the other Castlevanias, but I wanted to do it in chronological order, not of release, but of the in-game story.
Oh.
No,
like
that's such a bad idea.
It is such a bad idea, but I'm all about story, which these games, the story is not the highlight.
No, it's not the point at all.
I stopped that journey very quickly, so I didn't get too deep into it.
Yeah.
2D?
3 deep.
Gameplay.
So the immediate thing that catches your attention is that you get character selection. And
Right. Nuts.
as far as I'm concerned, none of the games prior to this one in the Castlevania series were you able to. You're kind of just given your character, and you play with that character. And another thing there is I think that all of the characters before here were like right in line of the Belmont clan, or I think there's 2 different clans, but like they were all a part of the same kind of family and dynamic. In this one, the girl that you're given, Carrie Fernandez, as far as I know or am concerned, is not a part of either of those lineages.
Not unless there's some lore later in the series where they connect them. She's just some magical girl from the village, the nearby village. Yeah.
And I bet they do connect them because she's a young orphan girl, and any orphan, has something there. But
there's something.
But like even in the game, like the person that you meet says, "Are you just a lost villager?" So like she's not your typical protagonist in the Castlevania series. But Reinhardt is. He's got a whip. He looks like a warrior, like he's straight up.
He looks like a Belmont. Yeah.
Oh, certainly, and plays like one with the whip and all.
Sure.
Carrie, on the other hand, is easy mode because you go around with compared to Reinhardt because you go around with this heat-seeking bullet. It's not a heat-seeking bullet, and you cast it as you run around in this new 3D environment.
I mean, it's kind of heat-seeking bullet. It's basically a heat-seeking. But yes, she is easy mode. The other thing that stands out immediately, besides, yes, the fact that it's a 3D game, is that previous Castlevania titles were strictly platformers. Like, platformers. They were they defined the genre. This game is actually more of... Well, it is an adventure game, an action adventure game,
absolutely,
much similar to a Zelda, like Ocarina of Time. Hear me out. Don't shake your head at me. I know that it's not the same game, but it's not a platformer. First, it does have platforming in it, it's like a 3D platformer, but you're walking on ground and exploring and adventuring, which is not something that you did before in these games.
Of course I'm going to shake my head at you. Yeah, like you're objectively wrong to compare it to a Zelda and not to compare it to Resident Evil. Yes. It's not a
comparison later.
It's not a platformer at all. Your main point is right. I stand by the fact that the analogy was poor. It feels to me exactly like a horror adventure game.
Did you just say it's not a platformer at all?
Yes.
Then you didn't get far enough because there are certainly platforming sections in this.
There's a
game.
ton of platforming in this 3D video game. The heart of this game is an action adventure game and not a platformer.
Okay. Yes.
I don't know.
No, I do agree with that. I think the heart is this action adventure, but I do say a la Ocarina of Time. It is this is this 3D environment that you are being able to move within relatively the opposite of linearly, unlinearly, like
unilaterally.
Because even in the opening area where you're not even in the castle yet, you're out in the graveyard kind of area.
Yes, the forest.
It's somewhat easy to get lost or turned around, and because there's a few different areas and you're able to move around wherever you want in that. But it's a good little area to test out your abilities with Carrie. You don't have a whip, but you do have that, that magical orb ball that I talked about, that if you charge it up long enough, I think it can last longer, hit a few different enemies. You also have those sub-weapons like you do have in this series, and it's the same sub-weapons. So you have like the cross that you can throw, the knives that you can throw. You even have that holy water.
Yeah, your axes, all the normal stuff.
Yeah, all of that. And then you've got a slide like you do in these games, but with Carrie, you've got a brand new slide where you can slide on your tummy into home plate.
Reinhardt doesn't do tummy, but Carrie's slide, guys, got me good. It got me good, and it's funny because you never need it, or you never use it. It's never even, there's no part of the game where it forces you to slide. Like, it's just there because they did it, and she's sliding into home plate. It's great.
The best part of the first play is you discovering her little slide and just freaking out about it.
It's great. It's so stupid looking, and I like it when games look stupid because it makes me laugh. But the note about that first section, it's way too long. Yeah, sure, it's good to try out abilities, but you can do that in the first
too long.
2 seconds. It's like, look at other Castlevanias. The beginning of those games, you're outside of the castle for
Seconds,
not even a minute. You're fighting a couple skellies, and maybe it teaches you a couple of different like slide mechanics or jump mechanics, and break some torches. But in this one, it's like samey, like just open this door, open this door, open this door. It was way too long. I hated that intro section. It put a bad taste in my mouth, unfortunately, because when you finally do get into the castle, I feel like that's where the meat of the game is, and that first section's so stupid.
You didn't have to wait long though to fight a boss. They throw that first one at you 20 seconds into it.
It's a massive skeleton that you have to try to face and fight while he's bringing up little skeletons. It's a relatively easy battle. I think the biggest struggle there is trying to get your camera and lock-on system to work.
Yeah,
That's the battle.
Yeah, pause there.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a tutorial, and what they're teaching you is how bad the targeting system is about to be for you for the rest of the game. Yeah. That's the lesson here.
It's exactly what it is.
Targeting system, lol. What are you talking about?
No, exactly. Like, I noticed it in Nolan's first play. I mean, you struggled with it, and so like
the rest of the week.
It's oh man,
it's there. Yes, there is a targeting system.
It just targets everything you don't want to target.
That and then like this game, the combat's not. It's not great. It's not super fluid because you need to kind of always be on the move, and the camera being what it is,
stays behind.
That's a problem. It stays behind you, and we add 3 other camera modes. They're literally indistinguishable. The boss one is the most useful one, but you only get it in boss fights because it kind of zooms out so you can see more of the giant boss you're fighting. The rest of them, it's like you are like running away far enough from the enemy. Okay, I'm safe. Turn around, hit R or hit up, C up, so my camera readjusts and I can see. Do a couple hits and then run to the other side till I'm safe, and then do it again.
Or if you play like me, just don't look at the enemies. Run around as Carrie and just cast your wand and let it auto target. Well, I wasn't.
What if you're Reinhardt?
Then you're out of luck.
Yeah, the camera, even the button configuration. You just mentioned like up C, but like right C is your interactable. Like that interacts with things.
Yes, it's weird.
Z is fine being your tummy slide. R with lock on. Like some things make sense, but a lot of things on the button configuration doesn't necessarily make sense. The boss battles in general, they just all felt the same to me because you're doing the same. They look different, but it's what you were just talking about. You're running away from the attacks, and I know this is what you do in, I guess, other games, but like all you're doing is jumping like crazy, trying to avoid things, while as Carrie just throwing your missile anytime that you get a chance. I don't know. Boss battles felt underwhelming to me.
I'm fine doing the same thing in those fights, but I agree, underwhelming is what I would call all the boss fights, because with the exception of the Undead Bull that is like in the middle of the game, that one was pretty sick. I mean, it was actually challenging. The rest of them, pushovers. It's like they're too easy. They didn't feel like boss fights. Even the final fight wasn't as epic as it could have been because I just won, and I was playing on normal. There's easy and normal mode. I was on normal.
And let me say this. I believe this is the second game in a row, last week's game and this week's game, that you beat this.
I'm on a roll. Week. I beat this one twice. I beat it with Reinhardt and Carrie.
What?
You're a machine.
Well,
I got the secret endings, or like the good endings, and I beat the secret boss.
That's weird and gross, but it isn't that long of a game, correct? It's
that's what
4
I was
hours,
gonna say.
5 hours,
dude. It's so short. I was playing one day, and I told the Game of the Week channel where I was, and Garlisle goes, "Oh, sweet, you're in the final stretch," and I was like, Seriously? I feel like it just like what?
Yeah.
It's a short Castlevania game. Maybe I'm just considering Symphony of the Night, and that game's long. But the rest of the Castlevania, sure, they're not like super long games, but I thought a 3D action adventure one would certainly be longer than it is.
Right. And I felt like, and maybe I just didn't get there, but there's not as much backtracking in this game. In the Castlevania games I played before, there's tons of backtracking, revisiting rooms, trying to find all the secrets, getting percentage completion.
Well, Symphony of the Night is. The Metroidvania ones, yes. Classic Vania, no backtracking. This one's kind of a mix. Like that middle section, the center castle, I think it's called, there's backtracking there. But they get creative with it so that it's not the exact same thing, and it didn't bother me. Well, but yeah, you're right. Symphony of the Night's like...
The little bit that there was gross to me. I put a note here that says that it frustrated me, but it wasn't excessive. It wasn't... This was a Jurassic Park, you know?
And something that is built into the game that is encouraging you to beat it quickly is this day-night cycle, time-based...
Interesting
environment and world. So I'll go back to Ocarina of Time, kind of. It's got this internal clock that's going at all times. So you've got day and night, and different things are open, or different enemies are attacking at different.
They do. They take more damage. Like it takes more to kill enemies at night. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there is a similarity here in that you've got this day-night cycle that can be controlled some. You get these little moon cards.
The cards.
Is that what
moon cards? Yeah.
That can then, change the time of day. But there are certain things that happen in the world only
NPC,
at certain times or within time frames. And some of them are necessary to move on. So there's a girl early on that you need to meet that is watering her roses with blood. And you can only meet her, I think, between like the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. And so if you don't come during that time, you've either got to try to forward the time, or you just got to come back at a different time. But you've got to meet her and able to, in order to forward the game. I want to know what your thoughts are on that. Did you like that concept, and did they implement it well here?
I liked the concept. I didn't love the implementation.
Okay. Cool. Don't elaborate anymore.
Well, no, I think I agree. I do like that a lot, and there's a reason for it. It's not just there for the sake of being there. That would be lame. But the good ending is tied to that. If you beat the game without using, I think, a total of 4 cards, so like in a certain amount of days, you get the good ending. So there's incentive there to not use them. But also, those enemies at night are annoying. Like especially in the backtracking section, like... there's an item you have to carry around where you cannot jump. You're not allowed to jump or you'll blow up.
Yeah.
And that makes fighting hard. Like, it's not okay. So I like it. I think the implementation's fine. There's probably more they could have done with it.
I think you have to beat the game within 16 days, business days, to get the good ending there.
Yeah.
I don't like day-night. I don't mind day-night cycles. I don't like when things are completely tethered to that. I didn't love it in Ocarina of Time. I don't love it here. It doesn't happen in many games, in many games. But the ones that I find them to be more like get in the way of what I want to do rather than enhance the story.
It was popular at the time to put that in the game. I don't know why.
Do you get frustrated by that fact in real life?
I mean, I think we all do. We all, like, it kills us.
I wanted more platforming overall. We did say that there's for sure platforming in this game. Like,
you wanted more?
I did. Oh, yeah.
In this game?
Yes. Yeah. Think about
it. The platforming was the roughest part of the entire game to me.
Ooh. Well, I disagree. I think combat was definitely the roughest.
No, you don't. Because
I think combat was definitely
3D platforming with the camera that we had, with also like a hit from an enemy knocking you into lava or into a pit. Worst thing.
I mean, that's not a problem with carry. Just shoot them before you start jumping. Reinhardt, sure, maybe that's a thing, but you can grab the ledge. There's a ledge grab, and it's very generous. If you think, oh, I jumped, I don't know if I'm going to make it, hold A. Like, keep your hand on the jump button, and you'll grab a ledge.
This is interesting.
And, like, you can let go and still grab it. Like, it'll still let you. It's generous.
Philosophically, I wish the game was more of a platformer to be true to, like, what Castlevania is to me. Practically, I'm 100% in Dustin's camp. The platforming here was rough. I had areas that were punishing, areas I expected to make a jump that I couldn't, areas I didn't expect to make a jump that I could. It was hard for me to line it up, and yeah, it was probably one of the more frustrating parts of the game to me.
Did you get to the Tower of Sorcery?
Those stupid platforms that disappear when you try and jump on them. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. You're bad at games. What are you talking about?
I mean,
that's platforming in the whole thing.
That's true, but it has nothing to do with anything else.
Yikes. Yeah, I wanted more platforming overall. I love me some classic Vania, and it would have been nice if there was just kind of more of an emphasis overall on platforming versus exploration, because I don't think they did it great. I did get some Resident Evil vibes, Kenny, with the exploration side of things a little bit. I wanted to time my jumps, in the Tower of Sorcery. I loved that section. I liked it a lot.
I honestly, that's so interesting because I feel like you're going to be the only person ever to enjoy the platforming in Castlevania.
Oh, I certainly don't think that's
64
true.
Because no, it is notoriously, like, that's one of the things that is regarded as one of the worst things that happened in this game because of the camera, so much of it you're having to make these leaps of faith to a ledge. I do agree with you that the grab on to the ledge mechanic super generous, generous. And like you said, so many times where even I grabbed it and then let go, but then grabbed it again because like there's a window there where you can still.
Right.
That's super nice, but the amount of times that I thought that I was going to make something, or the camera shifted when I didn't need it to shift, or wouldn't shift when I needed it to shift, and or when I got hit off a platform, it just absolutely jaded me to the platforming.
But Carrie's jump is so OP. It's fast and it goes far. Like, I never struggled to
very far
make a jump. Man, y'all are bad.
Nolan's just really good or something.
Well, I might be a bad gamer when it comes to platforming, but the bosses didn't really cause me any issues, not near as much as they did in your first play. But I did have this issue, and I will have to share with y'all that I don't even know if y'all know the severity of this. So I played for hours this week, having selected easy mode. You can judge me; I don't care. And I got to a pivotal moment in the game. And in the story where I beat a boss, and I was kind of glued at that point of like, well, I really want to see this one to the end. After beating that boss, I was given the message, you have completed the game in easy mode. If you want to face the challenge or more stages, try normal mode.
Worst
That's
implementation. Awesome. No, it's terrible.
That's amazing. Why?
No.
Why?
Yes,
because I played half of the game without any indication that it was going to cut me off early.
That's great.
You are so wrong. If there's a warning or a note when you select easy mode, which it does in other games, that you're not going to be able to complete the game, understandable. But with no indication, and then to allow you to play half of the game before telling you
off?
can't play anymore, it cuts you off. I don't have it here anymore. After the castle, it's right at the midway
after a boss
point. Say that again.
It's after a boss.
It's after a boss. Yeah.
Is it her ancestor?
Yes.
Boss, vampire lady?
That you couldn't save.
Okay. This is.
And then you get in the elevator after that, and it's like, try it again on normal mode if you want to play the rest of this game. That's so bad.
No, that's so messed up. It's like, messed up. It's a terrible design.
I get it, Nolan. Play normal mode, like be,
Normal's easy in
Demon
this
Souls,
game.
all those things. But, and I'm fine with even having that, but you have to make it clear. You cannot, for the first time, tell the gamer when they played halfway through the game. Either do it way earlier, or make a note early. Make a note when you're selecting the mode. Do not do it at the halfway point.
Dude, that's so funny. I can't believe that happened to you.
It's messed up.
Why did they do that?
Because they're evil.
That's weird.
Aged.
Let's just jump in right away to talk about how the graphics have aged. Castlevania is known for its aesthetics. True.
Yeah.
Partly.
And they go with this, gothic, Draculaic kind of vibe, and they aimed for that here, but it felt like they had severe limitations when it came to textures and models and design. Everything felt blurry, muddy, and although the pieces were there, they just felt so bland to me.
I mean, to some degree, there were limitations here. You're doing things in 3D for the first time, which is going to be wildly different from this 2D world that they've lived in, design-wise especially. And they chose not to use the expansion pack and give you that little bit of extra resources to kind of, buff up the N64 experience a little bit. And so I'm not surprised by that fact. There's certainly people that do N64 games make it look good. I wasn't overwhelmed with the quality here, but I felt like for what they were doing and the worlds they were trying to set up, yes, they kept it very, very, very simple and almost a little boring at times. But I felt like they did a relatively good job of setting the scene and kind of going through this castle and letting you know how things looked. I don't know. It's ugly and it's a little barren, but they communicated what was going on pretty well. I don't know.
N64 struggles every time we get to the aged section, like when we deal with this console.
True.
And it looks like an N64 game, which in my opinion, I'm a big fan, is worse than PlayStation 1. It's just not, it's hard to palate nowadays. I'm kind of with Kenny. I expected to be offended at the graphics. I can't complain too much. In fact, the face models look leagues better than GoldenEye.
Than some games, yeah.
They actually looked like PlayStation faces. Like, you know what I mean? Like they had a face and it wasn't just like a polygon nose and two dots for eyes.
Especially the characters, not the area. But there were things that were legitimately kind of scary, even playing it today and looking back, and they look super simple. That I don't know. I feel like they hit the vibe of what they were going for this game, as well as you could hope for the N64 and their first take at it. In my view.
And Dustin, I will give you the tone thing. I do think it's not as saturated in the theme of the Dracula stuff and what they normally go for. But I did notice a healthy variety of environments and areas with very little reused assets. I was kind of surprised by that. Most areas, new areas, were completely different than the last. Some of the enemies were the same, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. I kind of liked the way it looked.
You liked the way it looked?
Yeah. I love Carrie's design. She looks awesome. Simple, cute. The little tassels flowing off. I can't complain. I don't have any complaints on my nose.
Little crush going on.
No, she's 10, bro.
Wait, she's that young?
Yeah, she's 12 or something.
What,
or
10
16.
or 12?
Really?
I mean, it's not enough of a difference, but that is a difference.
It's not a difference. She's a child.
Well, okay. I'm surprised that you liked it. Man, this is interesting. Very interesting. Okay, the music. We're gonna differ here too.
No way.
There's no way we're gonna differ here.
Yeah, there's no way.
Maybe we are. Are you about to complain? You say your piece, and then we'll see
I'll go
what happens.
first this time, and then Dustin will go next.
Okay, go.
Okay. From the title theme alone, just that first title theme, amazing. Violin, and then it goes into a waltz. That opening theme sets the bar high, but then pretty much every area had a really solid track. The ones towards the end of the game, great, really good. I like the music a lot. This is a really good soundtrack overall.
Dustin may have wanted movie score. This leaned a lot more simple and atmospheric and like subdued. I felt like it was completely appropriate for the game. I feel like I'm 100% in Nolan's camp on look and sound of this game, but 100% in Dustin's camp on like play style and gameplay elements. And it's really interesting because I completely agree with some of you and completely disagree with the others of you. It's weird.
So why did it suck, Dustin?
The intro track is amazing, and it goes downhill from there. I think every other track that I come across was unimpressive. It was fine, but it wasn't anything like some of the other tracks in the rest of this series that are some standouts, incredibly brilliant, beautiful, but also haunting audio tracks in some of these other games. In this one, none of them, other than the violin in the first, were memorable to me. It was this minimalistic, often somewhat silent areas that I was traversing around, and then when there were tracks, they were fine, but nothing as remarkable as some of the other tracks in this series.
Okay, go with me here. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Castlevania.
Period.
They were just living up to what they wanted the game to be. Simplistic, but it fit and it works.
I will admit part of the problem here is probably that my introduction to the series was arguably the best game in the series.
The best that's not a classic one, yeah.
Well,
for sure.
So I looked this week on like best or like ranked. I wanted to see where people put Castlevania 64, and it's not high. But
I didn't think it would
often in number one was Symphony of the Night. So like,
yep,
they definitely find that one up there. So I think that is part of what is causing me to just be like, well, compared to this game,
yeah, and that's fine. And I'm not trying to argue here that this is anywhere near Symphony of the Night. Like, it's not. It's different. It's a different take, and I think it's fine. And while we're talking about music, sound design overall too, pretty good. There was the skeleton death noise was like right. They got it right because it wasn't the exact audio from like Super Castlevania 4, but it was like an homage to the skeletons crumbling, and I appreciated that kind of stuff that they added in there.
The voice acting, because there were some voice lines.
Pretty minimal.
It's
I mean, there's not a lot of voice acting throughout the game.
Yeah. I think that it's again in this era where it's serviceable. You're not going to get the best of voice acting, but I think it works fine, and the quality sounded okay. Sometimes with some of these games, it sounds like they were in a closet with like a iPhone, like microphone or just something really bad. The quality is okay. The production of that is fine. It's nothing to write home about. I thought some of the like writing of the script, and maybe it's translation, I don't know, is just very bad, cheesy, weak. The dialogue between two, but again, that's not what you're playing these games for typically.
Sure,
although this one is more adventure, where story and dialogue does come more into play because there's less platforming. So you gotta have something to fit to get in the gap there.
Yeah, Dustin, you mentioned you were worried about comparing this game to another game and it affecting your judgment. I don't think Symphony of the Night is the fair comparison. But I think it's absolutely fair game to compare this to Legacy of Darkness. Same exact console. Arguably what they wanted this game to be originally and just couldn't quite do. And so I think if we're talking about aged and looking back and saying, should you go back and play this game? The question isn't, should you play this relative to every other Castlevania ever? The question is Legacy of Darkness so much more what this game was supposed to be anyways, that you should just play that and completely skip this one? Well, I think that's a more interesting discussion, and I don't know that we're fully informed. Maybe we'll play Legacy of Darkness at some point, but yeah. It's a reality.
It's supposed to be a director's cut, right, of this game, technically. And it's got 2 more playable characters, I think. Some other differences and improvements. I don't know. I haven't played it, but I mean, yeah, the answer is probably pretty clear that you should play that one instead. If they're having the debate, because again, based on all the memes from this game, you hear equal, like, not praise, but just recommendations to check out the quote unquote better version.
Yeah, I think we are informed to speak on it. I looked into it this week, and by the way, Legacy of Darkness, like Kenny said, N64, it came out in 1999. It is a prequel to Castlevania, but it's also an expanded Castlevania. So like you get to do both, but that's exactly what it is. They weren't able to do what they wanted to do, and they didn't get the fan response like they hoped that they would have gotten. So they were like, let's try it again, and it was for all intents and purposes a better version, a better take, a better game. But if you have to, the same year, re-release the game but better, something wasn't right there.
And I'm okay with that. If you're like, ooh, that didn't work, but it almost makes this game feel like an experiment in the first place, like they were planning that all along.
Yeah. I do want to say before we leave this section, I'd mentioned it last week. Kenny wasn't here. For the last at least 3 episodes, Kenny, we've had someone in our community, I believe their name is Michael J, and they have been remixing a single song from each of the games that we've been playing. And sharing it with the community. So they started with Pickle Wars.
Best
that track I was talking about,
on.
Kenny?
Yep.
That first one? Yeah.
They did a song from last week and this week as well. So Michael J did a remix to Bloodlines, which is that intro violin song. And so you can check that out in our community. It's really great, and love anytime that our community members create some content related to what we're doing. It's always super cool. And then wanted to say, if you want a copy of Castlevania for your Nintendo 64, it's $27 used. Not bad at all. But if you want it new, it is $228.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, it's up there.
How much?
That's way more than I thought.
How much if you want it undead?
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not the game gets our vote for New Game Plus status. It is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. It does require 2/3 of the vote to swing one way or the other. I'll begin. And simply put, I think it is a fine game, but it is a bad Castlevania. I think there are problems with it. We've talked about those. Chief among those, I think, are the camera, the battle system, and the platforming. 3 major things that are needed to make this kind of game really work. I would imagine, we've already talked about it, the Legacy of Darkness does it better, and maybe I would enjoy that. I think some games make it into 3D well. I feel like this was an attempt, but a poor attempt at bringing a beloved series into the modern 3D realm and world. So I do not give Castlevania, period, my vote for New Game Plus status, period.
I'll go next. And I think I'm about to piss people off.
Piss on them.
I like this game. And
this is so weird.
Who's going to be mad about you liking a game?
I'll admit it was a hard sell up front. Like I said, I love a good hate fest. I'll jump on a hate bandwagon. If people don't like a game, yeah, I'm in. It's funny. So going into the first play, you can kind of see that on my face and what I'm saying. And it's a hard sell because I think the intro section is trash. It doesn't teach you very well. It's just way too long. Once you get into the game, I think there is a solid 3D action adventure platformer here. And I don't think it's... Those of you that are Castlevania fanboys that hate this game, I do not think it's as bad as you think it is. I think it's funny to hate on it, sure, but when you have a series that I would argue is perfect, it was already perfect on the SNES. Like, they had started this thing and they improved on it each time they released a game. It is a perfect platforming series. If you're going to take that up a mountain to climb of 3D games, this is a new thing and we have to do this, you're going to drop some of it and you're going to make mistakes and it's going to feel different. It's just, that's what it is. But I don't think it shouldn't exist in the catalog. I'd be lying if I came to this episode and told you I played through both characters and I hated this game. I liked it. And I have no problem recommending it. New Game Plus.
All right, as it often is, for some reason, it's in Kenny's hands to determine if this game gets New Game Plus status or not.
Yeah, y'all are wildly unhelpful for me here, because have been so torn. This is one of those that I literally in my notes was like, I'll just decide during our conversation which direction I'm gonna land, because
My gosh.
I'm on the fence. This game gets a lot of crap. Some of it is probably more than it really deserves. Like it gets, I'm in Nolan's camp there. This is a pretty good, fun game just on its own. There's certainly a few gameplay details that they could tighten up, but it's hard for this one because the bar for it was so high. The rest of this series was just like absolute bangers. And so I think without the Castlevania title and the preconceptions that came out, this probably would have been a relatively popular game, especially if it had come out earlier in the N64 release cycle. This one was pretty late to the game there, and I think that's part of why it wasn't as popular. It took them longer to do this 3D conversion, and it would have been better received. I don't know. I also think it's pretty unfair for it to compete against Legacy of Darkness. I'm sorry. I think that the only actual fair comparison is for it to compete against Legacy of Darkness, because that's the game that they actually were trying to make and didn't, as I understand it. It's a pretty good game. I think it gets more hate than it deserves. It's awkward as it comes of age as a 3D title, but it's also not a terrible game, and I had some fun with it. Everyone's allowed to pick their sides. I'm okay with that. As for me...
In my house.
No New Game Plus. If they'd gotten Legacy of Darkness out as this game and it wasn't 2 titles but 1, if that whole development sort of shtick that was just a lot for them to overcome hadn't happened, even though it's less popular than the other ones, I'd have been like, go play it. As it was, they're literally like, this is what we wanted, this is what we delivered, oh, now go try and do the actual thing. Not fair to compare it to others. Fair to compare it to Legacy of Darkness. Don't play this game. Play that one.
Only one person continues after they give their vote.
I know. I'm so torn. I feel guilty here.
I'm fine with this. This one's just for me. It's for me.
Yeah. Well, Nolan's favorite Castlevania game is not New Game Plus certified. But what did you think? We had 526 votes on YouTube. It's interesting. 34% said yes, it's worth playing today. 23% said no. So like they're up there, and then 43% have never played it before.
That is very surprising on all 3 answers. I would have thought it would be overwhelmingly no.
And I say I wouldn't, because I do think that at first it had a hard rejection, but I think in recent years some people have come back around and said it's not as bad as we made it out to be.
That's the consensus I've had. I think. Love it or hate it, like it's people are less offended at each other about this game than they used to be.
Okay.
Yeah. Proto-Dad said, Castlevania 64 is a bit underrated in my opinion. The game is structured more like the classic NES SNES games, which is something I enjoy a lot. The spooky atmosphere and presentation is top-notch. The music, being a lot more subdued this time, might bother some people, but I feel like it fits well in this edition. When the music does kick in, it's incredible. Shoutouts to the title theme being a beautiful rendition of the classic song Bloodlines. The biggest issue this game has is its clunky control scheme and stiff movements. Don't translate very well to 3D. It makes platforming, which is pretty prominent in this game, difficult to do consistently. This makes some of the later levels rough to traverse. While I do enjoy this game, I would probably recommend the second Castlevania N64 title, Legacy of Darkness, over this one.
Boom.
And that game is extremely similar, but overall much more polished. So this game receives no NGP from me.
There it is.
That's a trend we're about to hear is play Legacy of Darkness. I'm going to assume that every single person you read's going to say that.
But one of y'all made a comment, I think it was Kenny, but like, this is not early in 64. So you've
No.
got Ocarina of Time for your action adventure fights that do it so remarkably well in the control and handling, and then you've got Super Mario 64 with the platforming that was a launch title,
Yes.
and the platforming there second to none. So like you've got two incredible representations of these things that this game tried to do and did poorly on both fronts, in my opinion.
This was 3 years into the console's life.
Yeah. Super Gamer said Castlevania 64 isn't nearly as bad as it may seem at first glance. Though the first two areas are bland, flat, and relatively empty, the game soon introduces new and interesting environments for the player to explore. Furthermore, the soundtrack is often more ambient and energetic, but manages to create a more calming mood for the player to relax in. There are, however, a lot of elements of Castlevania 64 that haven't aged so well. The combat is clunky, helped in no part by the inconsistent camera controls. Some of the level design is obtuse and maze-like, and the graphics are nothing to write home about. It's not unplayable by any means, but this title is somewhat lacking in the well-crafted level design and tight, powerful combat from other entries in the franchise. In the end, this game is more of an interesting novelty you might spend 30 minutes on rather than a must-play adventure. No NGP from me, unfortunately. I'd recommend people play some of the other Castlevania or Metroidvania titles in the series instead.
Super Gamer Guy is like a huge fan. He's got like a tier list that's somewhere in Discord. You could probably find it. And he's got games lower than this one. So I'll take that as it's not the bottom of the pit.
Yeah, and again, I looked up ranking of the series, and this rarely was at the very bottom. There's a few titles in the series that are lower than this, but pretty consistently, this one is not up there. Right. And then finally, Garlisle said, while I struggle to call Castlevania not officially 64, but on the 64 a good game objectively, I am quite fond of it. The level design in particular demonstrates why, even when the stages can be rough, they're extremely varied, going from climbing up and down castle walls to being chased through mazes to Resident Evil-esque puzzle exploration. Music is another good example. There's only a couple of typically Castlevania tracks like the title theme, my all-time fave, but it builds a stronger atmosphere than any other games in the series. Wow. There are two flaws holding this game back. One, the controls really show that this game was made by a team who'd never worked in 3D before, and
absolutely
being stiff at the best of times. When your console started with Super Mario 64 for platforming and Ocarina of Time for combat, this game feels imprecise and restrictive. Second, this game was rushed out the door, so much so that Legacy of Darkness was released later, a director's cut version that adds more characters and stages and should be played instead.
Yeah, when you put it that way against Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time, it's rough.
Yeah, it is. And Dustin, you say later for that Legacy of Darkness release. I don't think this was like 9 months, 12 months later. It was like 3 months later. It was like they were shooting for this other stuff and then just couldn't. I don't know. Trying to hit a Christmas and pushed it or something. I'm not sure what the deal was there, but it was a wildly short turnaround between these two games, if I understand correctly.
It is important to note that this wasn't this was Konami's first 3D title.
Right.
Was it their first 3D title, period?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So
it didn't occur to me that was the case.
They really are trying to figure things out here, you know? And
yeah.
And you can tell. Thank you for sending in your thoughts on the Retro Game of the Week. You can do that each and every week to ngppodcast@gmail.com or hop into our Discord. We've got a commentary channel there. We had a lot more comments on the Game of the Week. Can't read them all on the show, but thank you. Continue to send in your thoughts on the Retro Game of the Week. But for now, we'll set aside Castlevania. By the way, let's just make a vote right here. Are we going to label this game, its title, Castlevania, or will we label it Castlevania 64?
No, that's what it's called.
I know it's not, but I think for clarity, you just call it Castlevania 64. Maybe you make the 64 parenthetical or something.
We don't agree.
But I think you put it on there.
No.
And I'm not going to share my vote, so I'll stay somewhere in the middle somewhere. No.
We'll see.
It's interesting.
Castlevania 6.
I'm going to say Castlevania, and then maybe in the show notes or in the text below, Castlevania 64.
There you go.
Meet in the middle.
That works.
We're setting aside the game, and we're going to randomly select the next retro game that we're going to be playing for the next 7 days from our retro master list. 15 years or older, any console, any genre, randomizing now. Nolan, it's time to get out that controller again.
Really? Genesis?
Not the Nintendo
Okay.
64 one, but the Genesis one from a couple games ago that
Okay.
I got you. Because we're going to
Sweet.
1993 with a side-scrolling beat-em-up. I know a lot of people don't love those for some
I'm
reason.
starting to like them now.
Nah.
But this one was published by Sega
Yeah? Yeah?
and released for the Mega Drive and the Genesis.
I feel like we played this.
We haven't, but it has been re-released a number of times as a part of the Sega Genesis Collection for PlayStation 2, PlayStation Portable, Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, as well as the Wii Virtual Console. It's not a Sonic game. It's
Interesting.
actually in a series called Golden Axe. We are going to be playing the third game in the series called Golden Axe 3.
Whoa. It's funny. I do not associate, when I hear beat 'em up, I do not think Golden Axe, but you're right.
I don't either.
I think
It's
I think
Axima.
back alley. Yeah. I think beating up like Streets of Rage.
Yeah.
That's good. That we played a Golden Axe.
I think we played the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh baby, that's cool. I'm ready.
I'm about to
The
dwarf
little
it
dwarf.
up.
Yeah.
Y'all both went dwarf at the same time.
Kenny's the dwarf.
All right, find a copy of Golden Axe 3 and play it along with us this week.
Join us in Discord. Our community is growing, and we want you to be a part of it. We have 999,999 members. We need one more person, and we'll hit a million. We'll have a party, and we will celebrate you.
A
one
pizza
person.
party in
You'll get
homeroom
pizza. We'll give it to you.
if you show up in Discord.
And $1 million. Just go to discord.gg/newgameplus and you'll see what I mean.
None of that's true, by the way.
One
Except
word
for
of
the
that
fact
was
that
true.
you should join us in Discord. You should also support us on patreon.com, like some of our folks who have helped our show continue to be so wildly successful. Our wonderful producers, who include the following people: Marley and Antonin, Ben Brunt, Carrie, Captain Protein, Dan, Francesca, Gimbin, Joey, Jordan, J. Robert, Justin, Clint, Knickknack, Corey, Maxima, Mr. Lattes, Nawal, Sajan, Secret Duck of Evermore, Shauna Thomas, Unbelievable William, and Zion. And welcoming for the first time our newest producer, Derek. Thank you for hopping on the producer bandwagon.
Hey, Bear.
It's the best bandwagon to be on. Thanks to Andrew for upping his patronage this week. And a huge Dwarven Golden Axe 3 magical thank you to our director level supporters, Bro Jim and
God.
Garlisle. I would get stuck in a beat 'em up with either one of you anytime.
You can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok, and YouTube. All of those links are in the show notes. Listen directly on any podcast provider of your choice. Make sure you subscribe so that you are the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. I know many of you are listening and you never have done that yet. And you hear me say it each and every week. Shame on you.
Shame.
No
I don't think
shame.
I've done it either, to be fair, but you should. You have no excuse.
Well, shame on you.
No shame, on me, boy.
Shame on Nolan, but no shame on our community.
Well, first
Kenny,
of
you
all,
haven't
Kenny,
written one.
you have never even listened to one of our episodes. So our video episode was edited by our friend Dylan. Our audio episode was edited by our good friend Dan Willett. Join us next week as we play Golden Axe 3. Until then, I'm still Dracula.
I'm glad to be back this week.
I'm fake Dracula.
Spoilers. And this has been New Game Plus.